She was found face down on imported Italian marble, in a penthouse above the clouds of Dubai Marina, at 3:12 in the morning. Blood, silence, and one phone call that would unravel the most perfect life this city had ever seen. The woman lying motionless on that floor was not just anyone. She was Dr. Marisol Buenaventura, a 31-year-old Filipina cardiac surgeon who had done the impossible. She had climbed from the provinces of Leyte all the way to the operating theaters of Dubai's most prestigious hospital, Burj Al Sahat Medical Center, in just 6 years. And tonight, that climb had ended in a pool of blood that no surgical skill in the world could fix. Welcome, and thank you for being here. I'm your host, and tonight we are going deep into one of the most jaw-dropping, heartbreaking, and frankly shocking cases to ever come out of the UAE. This is the story of Dr. Marisol Buenaventura, surgeon, wife, secret keeper, and the Dubai doctor murder case that rocked an entire nation. Pause for a second and really think about this. What if the person the world was applauding was quietly screaming on the inside? What if perfection itself was the trap? Hold that thought. Because by the time we reach segment 10 tonight, you will never look at a success story the same way again. Stay with us. This gets wild very fast. Let us go back to where this story actually begins, not in Dubai, but in a small apartment in Palo, Leyte, Philippines, where a 14-year-old girl named Marisol Buenaventura used to study by the light of a single bulb after her parents went to sleep. Her mother cleaned houses. Her father drove a tricycle. They had nothing except belief. Belief that their daughter would one day become a doctor, that she would carry the family name somewhere beautiful and far away. And she did. Marisol graduated top of her class at the University of Santo Tomas in Manila. She passed the Philippine Medical Board exams with the second highest score nationally that year. Then she did what thousands of Filipino medical professionals dream about. She took her credentials abroad. The UAE was not her first choice. It was her smartest one. Dubai was expanding its healthcare sector aggressively in the early 2010s, and the Burj Al Sahat Medical Center, a 900-bed facility in the heart of Dubai healthcare city, was actively recruiting internationally trained specialists. Within 3 years of arriving, Marisol had become the youngest section head of cardiothoracic surgery in the hospital's history. At 31 years old. Let that land. Patients flew in from Riyadh, Karachi, Cairo, and even London specifically for her. Medical journals in Southeast Asia ran features on her. The Philippine consulate in Dubai actually printed her photograph in their community newsletter as proof that Filipino professionals were changing the world. Pause here. If you were reading those headlines about Marisol back in the Philippines, would you believe any of this would end in a courtroom? Comment below what you think went wrong first. She was the Filipino dream wrapped in a white coat and surgical gloves. But here is what nobody in those newsletters mentioned: the cost. The invisible, crushing cost of being everyone's proof that it can be done. Because behind every award photograph was a woman who had not slept more than 5 consecutive hours in 3 years. Behind every standing ovation at a medical conference was someone who cried in the hospital bathroom between surgeries. Behind every headline about the Dubai doctor murder case that was coming, there was a person that the world had turned into a symbol and forgot to treat like a human being. Now, I need you to understand something about how Marisol ended up married, because this part of the story is both completely ordinary and absolutely heartbreaking at the same time. His name was Sheikh Badr al-Qubaisi, 41 years old. Third son of a prominent Emirati real estate family with holdings across Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Sharjah. By every measurable standard, Badr was what mothers in both the Filipino and Emirati community would call a catch. Good-looking, educated at LSE in London, charming at dinner parties, never raised his voice in public, and wealthy in ways that most people cannot even conceptualize. The introduction came through a mutual acquaintance, a Filipino-Emirati businesswoman who thought she was doing a good thing. Marisol's family in the Philippines lit candles at the church when they heard. Her aunt told everyone at the barangay. Her mother cried from happiness. And look, I am not going to be cruel about this. Badr was not a monster. He genuinely admired Marisol. He was proud of her career. He attended her medical conferences and sat in the front row and clapped louder than anyone. He bought her a penthouse in Dubai Marina. He sent money to her family in Leyte without being asked. But here is what the wedding photos, and there were many of them, 3 days of celebrations, 2 ceremonies, a Filipino and an Emirati one, 500 guests. Here is what those gorgeous photographs absolutely could not show you. They were strangers. Functional strangers sharing a beautiful apartment and a shared calendar and a jointly signed charity donation and absolutely nothing else. Badr organized their marriage like a business portfolio. He scheduled intimacy. He proposed communication frameworks. He once, and I promise you this is real, sent Marisol a spreadsheet of potential conversation topics for their anniversary dinner. A spreadsheet. For romance. Somebody pray for this man. Marisol, for her part, threw herself deeper into work. 80-hour weeks became the norm. Emergency surgeries became the excuse. And the quiet, suffocating loneliness of being celebrated everywhere except inside her own home became the thing she could tell nobody about. Because who would believe it? The Filipino surgeon married to an Emirati sheikh, living in a marina penthouse. What could she possibly have to be sad about? We want to know, have you ever felt completely alone in a room full of people who admired you? Drop a single word in the comments that describes what that feels like. His name was Dr. Nail Farouki. 37 years old. Half Lebanese, half Egyptian. Recently divorced. Newly arrived at Burj Al Sahat from a prestigious position at King Faisal Specialist Hospital in Riyadh, where he had developed an innovative pediatric valve repair technique that colleagues were still arguing about, in the best possible way. And yes, he was ridiculously handsome. I am just telling you so you understand why half the hospital's nursing staff suddenly developed an intense interest in cardiothoracic consultations. Moving on. His first real interaction with Marisol was during a complex neonatal heart surgery, a 3-month-old with a critical defect that required collaboration between their departments. Nail was the consulting specialist. Marisol was leading. Halfway through the procedure, Nail said something that stopped Marisol cold. He looked at her over the surgical field and said, "And I want you to really hear this," he said. "I have watched you work for an hour and I can already see that this job has cost you more than anyone knows. Not everyone understands that saving lives changes who you are." She told investigators later that she felt those words physically. Like someone had unlocked a room inside her that she had forgotten existed. And that, my friends, is where the Dubai doctor murder case truly begins. Not with the crime. With those words. Because what Nail had done, whether intentionally or not, was the most dangerous thing any person can do to a lonely, exhausted, emotionally starved human being. He saw her. The real her. Not the symbol, not the success story, not the award winner. Her. Their professional collaboration expanded rapidly. Post-shift conversations about complex cases became conversations about life. His divorce, her loneliness, his failed attempt to balance medicine and marriage, her growing invisible prison. They understood each other with an ease that felt almost unfair given how hard everything else in Marisol's life had become. What started as the most understandable emotional connection in the world became, over 4 months, a full affair. Hotel meetings during supposed medical conferences in Abu Dhabi. Long drives along the E11 highway to Jebel Ali where nobody from the hospital would spot them. Private WhatsApp threads with notifications turned permanently off. Interactive moment. Here is your first mystery clue. 3 people at the hospital noticed the change in Marisol's behavior before anyone else. One of them tried to warn her. Can you guess who? Keep watching. The answer is coming in segment 6. But here is the painful irony of this entire Dubai doctor murder case. The very thing Nail offered Marisol, being seen, being understood, was also the thing that would eventually be used against her. Because someone who knows every one of your vulnerabilities also knows exactly where to press when things go wrong. And things were about to go very, very wrong. Dubai is many things, magnificent, fast, ambitious, and full of people who are very good at keeping secrets. But no city on earth is actually good enough to hide a secret from someone who is already suspicious and has money to spend on finding the truth. Badr al-Qubaisi had been suspicious for months before he did anything about it. The signs were not subtle once you knew what to look for. Marisol had stopped looking at him when she spoke. She guarded her phone the way she used to guard her exam notes in medical school. She came home from supposed conferences in Abu Dhabi with no conference materials, no brochures, nothing. The confirmation came from a family friend, the wife of one of Badr's business associates who had spotted Marisol at a restaurant in DIFC, holding hands across the table with a man who was very clearly not her husband and very clearly very happy about it. Badr hired a private investigator the following Monday. Within 10 days, he had everything. Photographs from the restaurant in DIFC. CCTV footage from a hotel in Business Bay. WhatsApp screenshots obtained through methods that we will describe as legally gray. Time-stamped proof of at least 7 meetings that had been disguised as professional obligations. The confrontation happened at their dining table on a Wednesday evening, over the remains of a takeout dinner that neither of them had really eaten. Badr spread the photographs across the table one by one. Very slowly. Like a man who had rehearsed this moment and was determined to deliver every single line perfectly. He told her he would report the affair to the hospital ethics board, triggering an investigation that could cost her her license. He told her he would contact the UAE Immigration Authority to raise questions about the legitimacy of her residency, given that it was tied to their marriage. He told her he would call her parents in Leyte and tell them personally. He told her he had also found evidence of irregularities in a research grant she had administered, funds that had been misused in ways that could constitute criminal fraud. You have until Friday, he said. End this. Come home. Or I will dismantle everything you have built, piece by piece, starting with your medical license. Now, here is where this case stops being sad and starts being terrifying. Because on that same day, the same day Badr delivered his ultimatum, Nail Faruqi delivered his own. They met at a coffee shop in Jumeirah. And Nail, the man who had once told her he saw her, told her he was tired of being a secret. He wanted her to leave her marriage. Publicly. Immediately. And if she did not, he would make sure the hospital knew exactly what kind of woman she really was. The man who claimed to love her was now using love as a weapon. Interactive moment. Let us pause right here. At this exact moment in the story, Thursday morning, Marisol has exactly 2 choices, both of them catastrophic. If you were her closest friend and she called you right now, what would you tell her to do? Comment below. Trapped between a husband threatening to destroy her career and an immigration status, and a lover threatening to destroy her reputation, Marisol began to consider something that no decent person should ever consider. She began to think about a third option. Thursday evening. Marisol told Badr she had a mandatory emergency medical briefing in Sharjah that required an overnight stay. She packed a small bag, kissed him on the cheek, which, given everything, is one of the more chilling details of this entire story, and left. Nail's apartment was in a high-rise in JLT, Jumeirah Lake Towers. The building had a gym, a rooftop pool, and security cameras in the lobby and elevators that would later prove very useful to prosecutors. He had prepared the apartment for what he believed would be the night Marisol finally chose him. Flowers. Lebanese takeout from their favorite restaurant. A playlist he had apparently curated. A printed list, yes, printed, on actual paper, of apartments they could look at together once she had filed for divorce. This man had printed apartment listings. I cannot decide if that is sweet or deeply disturbing. Maybe both. When Marisol told him she could not leave the marriage, that the consequences would cascade in ways that would destroy both their careers, her family in Leyte, her residency status, Nail's romantic evening collapsed immediately into rage. The argument was ugly. He accused her of using him as an emotional outlet while maintaining her comfortable life with Badr. He brought up every private thing she had ever told him in confidence and turned it into an accusation. He grabbed her wrist when she tried to leave. And here is the moment that changed everything. 6 years of cardiac surgical training gave Marisol Buenaventura a knowledge of human anatomy that most people will never have. She knew, with clinical precision, exactly where the carotid artery was. She knew exactly how much pressure was required. She knew exactly how many seconds it would take. Nail lost consciousness within moments. He was brain dead before the ambulance was called. What happened next is the part that elevated this from a crime of passion to a case that would be studied in UAE law schools for the next decade. Marisol did not call for help. She stood there, and she made a choice. Then she staged the scene. Using her medical knowledge, she repositioned the body to suggest he had struck his head on the glass coffee table during a fall. She recreated blood patterns consistent with accidental trauma. She arranged the furniture. She gave herself 30 minutes to construct a narrative that she believed her medical expertise would make bulletproof. Only then did she call 999. Her voice on that call was calm, professional, horrified in exactly the right places. Remember the clue from segment 4? The 3 colleagues who noticed the change in Marisol before anyone else? One of them was a senior nurse named Fatima, who had actually pulled Marisol aside 2 weeks before the murder and asked if she was okay. Marisol told her she was fine. What do you think Fatima should have done differently? Detective Lieutenant Hessa al-Blushi had been with Dubai Police's Criminal Investigations Department for 11 years. She had worked everything from financial fraud to organized crime to 3 previous homicide cases. She arrived at Nail's JLT apartment at 11:54 p.m., 42 minutes after Marisol's call. The first thing she noticed was not the body. It was Marisol. Specifically, it was the way Marisol described what she had found. Too precise. Too medically accurate. Too organized for someone who had supposedly just stumbled upon a colleague's dead body. When you find someone you care about lying dead on the floor, you do not immediately calculate arterial blood pressure trajectories. You scream. You drop your phone. You are not clinical. Marisol was clinical. The forensic team arrived within the hour and almost immediately flagged problems with the scene. The blood spatter pattern was inconsistent with a stationary fall. The head wound required significantly more force than could be generated by falling against a glass table. And Nail's hands had defensive wounds, small lacerations and bruising consistent with someone fighting off an attacker. Then came the phones. Dubai Police's Cybercrime Division extracted the complete message history from both devices within 48 hours. Thousands of messages. The affair, the ultimatums, the escalation, the rage. The final message Nail had sent Marisol, 2 hours before his death, read, "Tonight you decide. Either we build something real together, or I tell everyone who you really are." Marisol had read it. She had never replied. Building security footage showed her entering at 8:22 p.m. and leaving at 10:49 p.m. 2.5 hours. Not a brief professional visit. Badr al-Kubaisi, when interviewed, provided the confrontation timeline and the photographs from the private investigator. Hospital colleagues described Marisol's deteriorating focus, her erratic scheduling decisions, the visible signs of someone managing a serious personal crisis. But the piece of evidence that sealed the prosecution's case came from the forensic pathologist. The specific injury that had killed Nail Faruqi, the precise location, the precise application of force, the precise angle, was not something that happened by accident. It was not something an untrained person would know how to cause. It required detailed, anatomical knowledge. It required, in the pathologist's exact words, someone with surgical training. Detective al-Blushi requested an arrest warrant on Saturday morning. Marisol was taken into custody at the Marina penthouse on Sunday, while Badr watched from across the room with an expression that witnesses described as pure, quiet devastation. At this point in the case, the prosecution has messages, security footage, forensic evidence, and a witness in Badr. If you were on the defense team, what would your strategy be? Think about it before segment 8, because the defense attorney in this case tried something very unexpected. The trial of Dr. Marisol Buenaventura lasted 4 months and became the most closely watched criminal proceeding in UAE judicial history since the Dubai doctor murder case first made international headlines. Filipino news channels ran live updates. Medical associations across the Gulf issued statements. The Philippine Overseas Workers Administration was asked 17 times in official press briefings to comment on a case they obviously had no comment on. The prosecution, led by senior advocate Mariam Al-Zabi, laid out the case with a thoroughness that bordered on the relentless. The messages, the footage, the forensic pathology, the staged scene, the decision not to attempt resuscitation, that last point being perhaps the most morally devastating detail of the entire trial, because Marisol had the training to potentially save Nail's life, and she had chosen not to use it. The defense team, and credit where it is due, they were creative, argued that Marisol was a victim of intersecting traps. Trapped in a transactional marriage that had never been a genuine partnership. Trapped under the weight of being a community symbol. Trapped by a lover who had turned intimate knowledge into a blackmail tool. Trapped in a country where her legal status was tied to a marriage that had become a cage. Expert witnesses testified about the psychological burden of immigrant women in high-performance professional roles, the particular pressures of the Filipino diaspora community's expectations, and the documented mental health crisis among healthcare workers globally. It was a compelling argument. I am not going to lie to you. Parts of it landed. But then Marisol took the stand. And something happened that no one in that courtroom expected. When the prosecutor asked her whether she felt remorse for Nail Faruqi's death, Marisol paused for a long time. Long enough that the judge asked her to answer. And then she said, "He was going to destroy everything I spent my life building. I could not allow that. Not, I am sorry. Not, I wish it had ended differently. Not, I was not in my right mind. I could not allow that." The jury, and the judge, heard a woman describing a calculated decision. Not a crime of passion, not a trauma response, not a desperate moment. A calculation. The verdict came after 9 days of deliberation. Guilty of premeditated murder under UAE federal law. Judge Khalid Al-Hamadi, during sentencing, noted that while the court acknowledged the considerable pressures Marisol had faced, those pressures could not justify the deliberate taking of a human life, the manipulation of a crime scene, and the decision to withhold life-saving care from a patient, something that violated not only the law but the most fundamental oath of the medical profession. Life imprisonment. Medical license permanently revoked. Deportation proceedings to follow upon any future parole eligibility, per UAE law. The sentence was delivered on a Tuesday. Marisol's mother watched on a live stream from Leyte. She did not say anything to the journalists waiting outside her home. She just closed the door. Let us talk about what the Dubai doctor murder case left behind. Because the damage did not stop with the verdict, and it did not stop with one family. Badr al-Kabaisi, despite being the victim of Marisol's deception and despite having had his entire private life exposed in a public trial, faced a quietly devastating social consequence. In certain Emirati social circles, the fact that his wife had been having an affair raised questions that nobody said out loud, but everyone was thinking. His family distanced themselves from 2 major joint ventures in the months following the trial. He eventually sold the JBR penthouse and moved to Ras Al Khaimah. Nail Faruqi's family, his parents in Beirut, his sister in Toronto, established a foundation in his name focused on mental health support for medical professionals in the Gulf region. They were careful in their public statements. They called their son a victim. They were not wrong. Nail had also been manipulated, also been used, also been discarded when he became inconvenient. The Dubai doctor murder case had multiple victims. Marisol's family in Leyte sold the house she had been sending remittances to build. Her father stopped driving his tricycle for 3 months. Her mother, by all accounts, never fully recovered from the particular grief of watching the thing you were most proud of become the thing the whole world talks about. Burj Al Sahat Medical Center overhauled its entire ethics and professional conduct policy. They implemented a new peer support program specifically for internationally recruited physicians. They began mandatory mental health screenings for all department heads annually. None of that, of course, brought Nail Faruqi back. The Philippine government used the case in updated guidance documents for OFWs, overseas Filipino workers, about the importance of accessing mental health resources abroad, about reporting workplace pressure and abuse, about the dangers of isolation. They did not use Marisol's name. They used the phrase "a decorated OFW medical professional," which somehow made it worse. And here is the thing about this Dubai doctor murder case that I keep coming back to. The thing that sits with me long after I finish reading the case files. At some point, somewhere in those early years in Dubai, there was a version of Marisol Buenaventura who could have been saved. Not from prison. Not from the consequences. Saved from the path itself. If one person, one colleague, one friend, one counselor, had sat with her and said, "You do not have to be perfect for us to love you. You are allowed to struggle. You are allowed to say this is too much." Nobody said that. And a brilliant, lost, desperate woman made a catastrophic choice instead. Here is your final mystery question. The prosecution argued this was premeditation. The defense argued it was desperation. After everything you have heard tonight, what do you believe? Leave your verdict in the comments. We read every single one. Dr. Marisol Buenaventura currently serves her sentence at Al Wathba Correctional Facility in Abu Dhabi, where she works in the prison health unit under strict supervision. Psychological evaluations conducted over the past 2 years note that she continues to frame the events as the inevitable result of impossible circumstances, rather than accepting that the choice, her choice, was ultimately her responsibility. She has been denied 2 compassionate review hearings. The board cited the same thing each time, a continued absence of genuine accountability. The Dubai doctor murder case asks us questions that are uncomfortable precisely because they do not have easy answers. What do we owe the people we hold up as symbols? What happens when we take a human being and turn them into a representation of what we all want to believe is possible, and then forget that human beings are fragile? What is the cost of a culture that rewards perfection so loudly that it makes vulnerability feel like failure? And what about the arranged marriage? I want to be careful here because arranged marriages are not inherently wrong, and many of them are deeply loving partnerships. But a marriage arranged primarily as a social transaction, without genuine emotional foundation, without space for the individuals inside it to be honestly known, that is a pressure cooker. And pressure cookers, when sealed too tight for too long, eventually rupture. Nail Faruqi did not deserve to die. He deserved better choices from someone who claimed to care about him. He also deserved to be more than a plot device in someone else's unraveling. He was a person with a family and a career and a future that is now permanently erased. Marisol Buenaventura did not deserve the crushing loneliness, the impossible expectations, or the cultural suffocation that shaped the years before the crime. She did deserve the consequences of what she chose to do with that pain. Both things are true. That is what makes the Dubai doctor murder case so hard to walk away from cleanly. If you are watching this and you are an OFW, in Dubai, in Riyadh, in London, in anywhere, and you are carrying something too heavy and you are too proud or too scared or too exhausted to put it down, please hear me. You are not required to be a success story every day. You are allowed to need help. Dubai has free mental health resources through the DHA, the Dubai Health Authority. The Philippines has the National Center for Mental Health Crisis Line at 1553. Use them, please. Because the answer to impossible pressure is never violence. The answer, as ugly and incomplete as it feels sometimes, is always another human being willing to sit with you in the hard part. To everyone watching tonight, to every person who stayed until the end of this story, thank you. That is not a small thing. You chose to sit with a complicated, painful, human story instead of looking away, and that matters. May you be blessed with the wisdom to know when you are carrying too much, and the courage to ask for help before the weight breaks something precious. May the families touched by this tragedy find peace that the courts cannot give them. May Nail Faruqi rest gently. And may whoever is watching this right now, in whatever city, in whatever silent struggle, may you be seen today, truly seen, by someone who loves you enough to tell you the truth. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it made you argue with your screen, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And God bless every single one of you. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.